Welcome to October's Kinship Worship. October is special because it is both LGBTQ History Month and what we like to call Kinship Awareness Month. Our theme this year is experiencing an inclusive community. And this month we have a number of events happening for our members and others who are interested to see what an inclusive community can look like. SCA Kinship is the only fully affirming and LGBTQ plus inclusive community for current and former Adventists. Our membership is open to both LGBTQ individuals and others. We affirm the dignity of each individual and strive to create an atmosphere of understanding, dialogue, and unity. Our members span every spectrum, including age, race, gender, sexual orientation, politics, language, country of origin, and religious beliefs. We do not expect conformity of our members, and we value diversity. At times, this can lead to disagreements and even some uncomfortable conversations. But we remember that we are all made in the image of God, and love is our highest virtue. If you are interested in seeing what we are all about, visit our website at stakinship.org or email us at info@stakinship.org to connect. Tonight's talk is provided by Chris and Debbie Widmer, who use the story of the Fiddler on the Roof to share parallels between the journey of the father in the story and the journey that families of LGBTQ individuals often go on. Feel free to leave comments if you have any questions or insights you would like to share.
So this is a little presentation, and I'm going to go rolling through here, and Debbie can chime this in, but this is my my digesting of the notes. We've watched Fiddler on the Roof several times, and it struck me and it struck Debbie as well that that movie and the story contained actually translates pretty well into parenting an LGBT child, and I'll explain as we go along here. I got over 40 slides here, and just drawing some parallels between the two as it relates to, of course, the theme of Fiddler on the Roof is traditions. The title of the musical is Without Traditions, Life is Shaky, like a fiddler on the roof. If you don't know what that means, that's right there in the opening lines. And Tevye is saying we have to have our traditions or life gets a little shaky. He says we're trying to scratch out a melody of life without breaking our necks. And I think that's a really good saying of how are we trying to negotiate life now as LGBT parents. The movie is based on the Broadway musical. Chaim Topol played Tevye 3,500 times on Broadway and then starred in the movie that is available out there in VHS and DVD and maybe on YouTube. And that's the one I'm kind of basing these comments on, the one we've seen many times. The books of Fiddler on the Roof actually have a variety of endings for Hava. And we'll talk about Hava as we go along. Hava, the number of endings in different books is Hava leaves her husband and returns to her family. She's kind of sorry she ever married a Russian. Hava drowns herself in the river. That would truly be a tragic ending in the book. Hava pleads to come back, but she is disowned by her father. And those are a few things I found. I'm trying to move this somewhere.
Okay.
I'm working on it. There we go. The movie deals with questions of how does one accept modernity while maintaining tradition and maintaining values that have been passed on to you from previous generations. The two acts of the movie, Act 1 has humor up to the end of the wedding.
But I think you go backwards because you never really, that's where we were.
Okay. In the theme, each daughter does something progressively more radical. And Tevye is left asking, how can I accept? How can I bend so far without breaking? Are you seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Hopefully this is controlling it. The other themes in the movie, women's role in society. It's mentioned in the movie that girls are people. Tevye begins to ask the question, why do we stay here? And he says it is our home. So the question, why do we stay in Adventism? When you talk to LGBT people, you know, why do they stay? Why do you, and the answer is, it is our home. It is our culture, our faith. It's been our education, sometimes our employment, and Adventism is very much home. These are my people, and that resonated with me in the movie. Act 1 is kind of humorous up to the end of the wedding, and then the transition. Tevye looks up asking God why all this has happened. Why has the wedding reception been destroyed? And then Act 2 deals more with sorrow and sadness, a little bit of humor mixed in, and it climaxes with the rejection of Hava and the departure from Anatevka, our home. Are the slides keeping up now? Okay. Act 1 has family humor, normal life up to the coming out of children. A transition, the parents look up and ask why, and that's in our experience. You know, Act 1, we can all think of our previous life with our family before our children came out, and then we point to that moment as a transition. Maybe we bargained with God, had anger, disillusionment. And Act 2, we often are dealing with sorrow and grief and evaluations and decisions and change. So this movie, I relate to it because my family was German-Russian Sabbath keepers who left Crimea and came to the United States for a new life. So I definitely identify with some of the characters in Fiddler on the Roof. Tevye is rather loose with the holy writings. He refers to the good book. It says this, but he's not entirely accurate with his understanding of the good book. And sometimes that's true for us or some people in the church. They have a surface understanding of the Bible, and they know what the good book says when they say the Bible is clear, maybe as they continue in their rejection of LGBT people. In The Fiddler on the Roof, there are 3 coming outs of the 3 daughters. You can picture it that way. Each daughter says to her father, "This is who I am. This is how I want to live my life. This is who I want to marry." The first daughter wants to marry a poor Jewish tailor, and so she asks her father for permission to do that. The second daughter wants to marry a Jewish political organizer, and she's not asking for permission, but she seeks a blessing from her father, and he gives her the blessing, and she leaves family for her spouse. The last daughter is marrying a Russian Christian, and she's not asking for permission, and she doesn't receive a blessing. She ends up being shunned by particularly her daughter and by her family for the spouse that she chooses to marry. In the film, there are 3 progressive changes. To marry whom they love. A Jew, the first daughter marries under a canopy with her family present. The second daughter marries whom she loves, and it's a Jew, under a future canopy there. And the family is not present for the wedding. And the third daughter marries whom she loves, a Russian, in a Christian church, and the family isn't even present. Family is absent. In fact, her marriage is not even pictured in the movie. So change is taking place. Tevye says you knock out a prop and where does it stop? There's a change in the matchmaker tradition, a change of expectation for Hodel to marry the rabbi's son. One at a time, I pull out a thread. Where has it led? Tevye says, to this. And Tevye cannot find the amazing grace to keep Hava close. His answer to Hava is no at the end of the movie. Tevye has a prayer life. He and God are good friends. Throughout the movie, he is spiritual and he is silly. That's one of the things that makes him an attractive character. And as the show goes on, he questions God and he even gets angry at God. And by the end of the show, he is not speaking to God. And I think that's significant. And I'm speeding through some of these. I understand that. I'm hearing some dishes rattle here on the sound. If you could mute that. I listed all of his prayers here. This is just kind of a quick view of my original notes. But he prays often in the film until the end. These are all his different prayers. After the bar, he says to God, I know we're the chosen people, could you choose someone else for a while? And he prays throughout the movie in his simple looking heavenward and talking to God. Even at the wedding, he looks to the heavens and kind of is asking for permission to dance with his wife as he does that for the first time. Tevye changes traditions in this movie for his own self. He's a progressive Jew. I'm going to dance with my wife, he says at the wedding. But as the movie goes on, he stops praying. That was an interesting observation somebody brought to me as I did some work on this online. At the train station for Hodel, he whispers to God at the end, take care of her and see that she dresses warm. So he prays for his first two daughters, but there are no prayers about or for Hava in the film for Tevye. And I think the reflection on that is having an LGBT child will cause you to have a change in relationship to God, perhaps. I know that's true for me. You wonder, is God hearing and answering your prayers anymore, or you may pray differently or less. I'm just drawing a few parallels here. This is an interesting one. The Sabbath prayer, as they pray and trying to remember, Golda, his wife, leads the Sabbath prayer, and the request in the Sabbath prayer is, may they have good husbands who will care for them. And amazingly, that Sabbath prayer earlier in the movie or the play is answered. A good man is found for all three of their older daughters. It's just not the one that tradition would have dictated that they have. A poor tailor, a radical Jew, and then a Russian Christian is the choice of spouses for their children. But the Sabbath prayer is answered. Also in the Sabbath prayer, the prayer is, may you be like Ruth and like Esther, which is different than the Jewish prayer that is prayed in Jewish homes today, but that's a modification in the play. And the answer is that Hava was like Ruth or like Esther. She married outside the ethnicity and she married outside the faith. Like Joseph, who marries the daughter of an Egyptian priest in the Bible, like Timothy's mom, who marries, as a Jew, she marries a Greek. Timothy was part Jewish, part Greek. The prayer for all their children, but particularly Hava, was answered, may they be like Ruth and like Esther. When Tzeitel is in the barn, she says to her father, I don't want to marry him. That's Laserwolf the butcher. I will be unhappy all my life. Is your agreement more important than I am, Papa? Please don't force me. And the question for LGBT parents is, what is more important? Your reputation, your career, your orthodoxy, your standing, or your child and their happiness? I think that really spoke to me as I reflected on this. I know this is going by fast, but it's just what I have here. When Motel and Tzeitel have been given permission to marry at the beginning of the movie, the poor tailor, they sing the song Miracle of Miracles. They have this amazing sense of relief. And a couple of you have, we talked about how when a child comes out, you go into the closet for a while. You don't want anybody to know. And then when you find out and other people know a child has come out and other people know, and you find out your worst fears are not realized, and it's actually, people are saying they love you and invite you over and things like that. There is relief and joy. When a child comes out to parents, particularly, they've had all this anxiety and they come out and they find out their parents hug them, love them. There is joy and relief after that panic and anxiety. And when they realize they still have family. The Miracle of Miracles songs, you can just see their joy. They're so happy that now they can get married. But there is no miracle song for Hava. God has made a wall fall down. That's a line in the Miracle of Miracles songs, Ephesians 2:14. Jesus has broken down the wall of separation between Jew and Gentile, male and female, slave and free, and we would argue straight and gay and cisgender and queer. Jesus is our peace for all. Anyway, a few thoughts. Even a poor tailor is entitled to some happiness, Mottel finally says to Tevye when he's talking to him about marrying his daughter. Even so, your LGBTQ child certainly is entitled to happiness and intact family relationships. And when they are intact, it's a beautiful thing. Tevye wonders what to tell his wife after he has told his daughter she can marry her tailor. And so parents struggle about telling their world, their family, their church, their work. We either go into silence for a while or tell partial facts. I know we did that for a while. And then eventually the full truth comes out, the complete factual truth. There are no community repercussions when Tevye goes back on his word other than Laser Wolf is upset. Golda accepts the dream that permitted and told him he needed to change his mind. The community comes to the wedding, and some of the repercussions just never happened for Tevye and his family, which is also interesting. Tevye is a normal parent. He's humorous and he's easygoing when some traditions are changed, but then he is angry and hard-hearted at a certain point. And I think Tevye shows in the movie both parental reactions, the parents that reject their children, some do, and the parents who change their traditions because their child's happiness is more important. In doing this slideshow and in reflecting since then, I put this in red even this morning. If God's grace ever ends for me, then amazing grace actually wasn't as amazing as we all thought. And if my grace for my children ever ends, then I am not showing my child that same grace that God has chosen me. What is my grace? Is my grace for my children amazing or not? The eyes have it. In the movie, they have close-ups on eyes, Laser Wolf's hopeful eyes, Tzeitel's hopeful eyes. And in these instances, Tevye sides with his daughter. Hoddle's hopeful eyes, Tevye sides with her, but finally with Hava, there is no close-up of her eyes as she's begging her father to accept her and her husband. And instead we see Tevye's eyes, and his final answer is no, she is dead to us. In the song To Life, Jew and Gentile men dance together or separate and then together, but Hava cannot marry Fyetka. The answer is no. So some say, I love gay people, I just don't want them to be in my church. I won't bake them a cake. I mean, they're okay in their place. That's kind of Tevye's line, you know, he's his own person. And we need to let him be where he is, but we need to stay where we are, separation. And in that moment, Tevye can't find his way to inclusion. I already mentioned their dance, changing an old tradition, so I'll skip that. Hava finally says to her father, he has a name, Papa. Fyetka meets Hava there together with the father. They're on the road. The first time Hava meets Fyetka, you know, she is going to be kind of harassed by some other of the Russian men. If you recall that scene, she's taking a cow home. And he saves her from that. He tells the boys to move along, and they talk together. He gives her a book. And his last words to her is, I want you to know my name. My name is Fyetka, and he becomes a person to her, and that's where she becomes interested. Next thing you know, they're married. And so I think it's important to remember that LGBT children, our friends, they are all people, they have names. And I think that's important to use the right name and pronouns for trans people, which we fairly quickly did with Tegan, our daughter. Tevye has a grief song. He sings Little Bird in the musical, and he says, you were a wonderful child, and she still is, but he just somehow can't see that. And he tells his wife that Hava is dead to us. There is 3 disbanding moments at the end of the movie. Hava leaves her family, when she says to her father, "We don't feel that way, that you should be sent away." The remaining family leaves Anatevka, and the community leaves each other, not knowing if or when they will ever see each other again. And it's the same way when a child comes out. There's great fear. Sometimes the fears are realized, sometimes they are not, but there is always and inevitably some changes to take place in the home, in the community, and in life. The sadness of leaving the synagogue in the movie. There's this great silence film of the rabbi packing up the scrolls and leaving. And that mirrors the sadness of LGBT people who have been forced to leave their spiritual home. This week, Debbie and I were online to the GASP meeting with PUC, and there were two people who spoke, both raised in the Adventist church, and today they don't consider themselves Seventh-day Adventist, probably for a variety of different reasons. They always have many Adventist friends, but they may have left, stopped going to church, no longer view it as their home. And oftentimes our LGBT family members, they leave Adventism, but not fully. It's still part of their social life. They still like haystacks and Big Franks. And, you know, one of them testified that Sabbath was still important to her, even though she didn't go to church. I'm going to skip that one. There's a song at the train station in the movie. Oh, what a melancholy choice this is, wanting home and wanting him. The middle daughter is torn between going to be married to her love and staying home. And you can imagine a gay son singing that to you using the masculine pronouns. Oh, how can I hope to make you understand why I do? Why I must travel to a distant land far from the home I love. And this is part of the lyrics of the song. Closing my heart to every hope but his, leaving the home I love. There where my heart has settled long ago, I must go, I must go. Who could imagine I'd be wandering so far from the home I love? And yet there with my love, I'm home. So a new home is created, sometimes far from home. I'm going to skip a few of these. Allies. Tzeitel, the oldest daughter, is an ally. At the end of the movie, she reaches out to Hava, who is walking away with her husband in the cart. And she yells after her, "We're going to Uncle so-and-so's." And the husband, the father, Tevye, is upset by that a little bit. Why did you have to tell him that? But Tzeitel is definitely an ally to her now shunned younger sister. Hava and Fyetka are allies. We can't live among these people who would do such a thing, and they're leaving the area too. Golda, the mother of the home, wants to be an ally, but she is fearful of what her husband will say. We're not privy to Tevye's motives. He cannot find a way to hold the paradox of the marriage tradition of Hava, his third daughter, and he ends up shunning her, at least for a while. I read one review or also another reflection on this, that if you were to continue the story and jump in on Tevye and Golda in the New World in the United States, that one of the other two daughters that are very young in the movie, one of them, the next child to come out to challenge the traditions, would come out to her father as being a lesbian, and see what happens when that happens in the continuing story. Of course, that would be fiction, of course. Fyetka's zinger to Tevye is some are driven away by edicts and others are driven away by silence. The best thing that a LGBT parent could do for their children is to not have silence with them, but to have conversation with them and love with them and pizza parties with them and trips together and to continue the family relationships. Some LGBT children are driven away by GC position papers and votes, others by the silence of local pastors and members and sometimes even parents. There is a spectrum of parental reactions in 6 steps. This is listed here, and we found this helpful. Sometimes you start on this somewhere and move one direction or the other. And the spectrum is active opposition to silence, to tolerance, to acceptance, to affirmation, and to advocacy. And all of those, would take a while to unpack. I think many Adventist people grow up with active opposition towards LGBT people. It's a sin. They understand the Bible is clear, and they might stay there. And then some move to tolerance or silence or acceptance. And I know Debbie and I have moved a long ways on that spectrum as well. Tevye is in active opposition to his daughter, who would marry a Russian Christian when he's not a Jew. The question to ask is, where are you now on this spectrum? And be aware of it, be aware of movement, and simply be aware where you are, and appreciate changes that God brings to your life and where you're at. Ultimately, in the movie, Tevye, he makes some changes. He makes big changes to his traditions. He accepts his first daughter. He accepts his second daughter, even though marriages aren't arranged. But his third daughter, he reveals his rejection. All right, now the big finish. Let's see here. I want to stop my video here.
Stop share.
And I'm going to stop the share too. Oh, you're still with me. Sorry that was long and crazy. There you are again. And I will show the video here. It makes me nervous to see that this is being recorded. I'll tell you that right now. But I'm going to close this presentation. I'm sorry it all just flew by. I hope it was semi-understandable. But this is me putting into lyric form from the movie some of the grief of the dirge of the last of the movie. It's a dirge. You can't call it anything else. It's the people leaving Anatevka, and they're all going their separate ways. And they're reflecting on what Anatevka was, what it's been, and they don't know when they'll see each other. Anyway, without further ado, I will sing you my version of Anatevka, re-lyriced, and it's Adventism. And may this not be true. I don't believe it's true for us in our home. And I don't think it's true for everybody that's here either. Because we love our kids. And those of you who are gay or lesbian, you are loved by your kids. This is a celebration of non-rejection, but this song is about grief. Here we go. Well, Adventism hasn't exactly been the Garden of Eden. After all, what have we got here? A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Some churches, some schools, some potlucks, some rules, some red books, some glow tracks, some fry chick, some amazing facts. Someone should have set a match to this place long ago. A conference office, a summer camp. What's a haystack or a special K-loaf? People who pass through Keene, Texas don't even know they've been there. A time chart, a hymnal, an ABC, some little Debbies. Oh, little Debbies. What do we leave? Nothing much, only Adventism. Adventism, Union College, onion beans, teaching teens in Walla Walla. Where else could Sabbath be so sweet? Chattanooga, St. Helena, dear to me, PUC and Angwin Village, where I know everyone I meet. Soon I'll be a stranger in a strange new place, searching for an old familiar face. From Loma Linda, I belonged in Adventism, must leave town. I can't stay in La Sierra. Dear little village, little town of mine. Now, you know, I kept most all those words on the West Coast. I'm a West Coast Adventist. I tried to get Orlando in there, but I just, didn't make the cut. So,
Chattanooga's pretty close.
As I wrote that and I revised it a little bit here recently, it kind of just expresses my thought, and we've had lots of conversations about have we left and how far have I had to leave Adventism? Have I really had to leave? Well, I left pastoral ministry. I did. And I can't say other than having Tegan wasn't a part of that. So it was, just part of it, not all of it. But when you have an LGBT child, you feel like you have to leave at some level. You have to step back. I used to be center of the church. I was the pastor. I preached every week. And now I'm no longer the pastor. I've showed up as a stranger for weeks at times, and some weeks we didn't go. And when people leave the church and they still like Big Franks and haystacks, and they still pay attention when the sun goes down Friday night, and they kind of put away some stuff and have an experience of Sabbath in their own home. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's how much we long for the day when the Adventist church might say, our gay and lesbian members, no matter whether they're in a relationship or not, are welcome and belong. And I think we're a long ways from that. And that's why this meeting and Kinship and the local PFLAG meeting and whatever it might be is so important to us. Anyway, that's my Fiddler on the Roof presentation. Tevye is both. He's the accepting father and he's the rejecting father portrayed in the one play. And he sets an amazing example of changing traditions. And on behalf of my children, I'm happy to have changed some of my viewpoints on sexuality from a biblical perspective to say, you know what, you still belong. Family over faith in that instance. And that's what Tevye does for daughters 1 and 2. He can't do it for number 3. And that's a tragedy. That's why that program, that movie ends in such sadness. And with that, that's my comment. And I thank you for listening. And I hope it is somewhat helpful and helps you be the accepting mom, the accepting dad that you want to be.
Thank you, Chris and Debbie, for sharing this message as a pastor and a parent. As an LGBTQ person, it makes me hopeful to see more parents who are able to go on this long journey to choose to love, welcome, and affirm their child while holding on to values of their faith. SCA Kinship International is here to support all people on this journey. If you're a pastor, church elder, leader, or the parent of an LGBTQ plus individual, and you would like to talk, ask questions, or get support, I invite you to connect with us. We can do this confidentially and connect you. We can even connect you with other pastors, church leaders, and parents who are also on this journey of staying true to their faith while showing compassion and love to people in the LGBTQ community. You can do this by emailing us at info@sdakinship.org, or following us on any of our social media channels. Finally, there are a number of events happening this month, so please visit our website at scakinship.org/events for many opportunities to connect. We hope you enjoyed tonight's kinship worship. Happy Sabbath and have a good night.